Hi, I am Sara. I am a Christian divorced and remarried blended family wife and mom, and I'm also a coach helping divorced Christian women learn how to find a loving and supportive relationship. So today I'm talking with Brittney Phillips. Brittney is a certified life coach, a certified step parent coach, and a former school teacher. She also is a biological mom, an adoptive mom, and a stepmom to 4 kids, and she and her husband value raising them with Christian beliefs. So she helps women strengthen their blended families. Hi, Brittney.
Hey Sarah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Good.
Good to see you. I thought that we would start out just by you sharing some of your story. So some of your things are a little bit similar to mine. As my audience knows, I'm divorced, remarried, blended family. So I thought that you could just share some of your story.
Yeah. Yeah. So I rewind, probably 11, 12 years ago. And I found myself in a marriage that was very unhealthy and took me a long time to come to the decision to get divorced, which I think most people, or that's probably, you don't really go into a marriage expecting that will ever happen.
Right.
But sometimes we find ourselves in those circumstances. And so actually, I wouldn't have gotten out of that marriage actually if it weren't for my parents who kind of helped me see things in a different perspective. It's a little bit complicated, but I was kind of mad at them, but also like really grateful at the same time.
Yeah.
So they were able to help me see things differently, but I was able to get out, and then it just rocked my world, which I think is really typical. Like I thought my life was over, and basically my whole life was just in this marriage, and I didn't know
Right.
anything else. And it was kind of had been my whole like dream as a child, like you get married and then happily ever after, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
the end. And so the end of my end was there, and I was like, oh, what do I do now? Is there any life left for me? Like, it sounds really dramatic, but it felt really real at the
Yeah. And
time to
people
me.
in that situation, that's how they feel. They feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get through this. Like, I thought this was my forever, and now it's
Yes.
not.
Yes. Yes. And so trying to like rebuild where I was at. I was a single mom at that point. I had full custody of my daughter. And so um just trying to figure out what life looked like for the two of us at this point. And I always knew I believed in marriage. Even after my marriage didn't work out, I still
Mhm.
believed in that and was still something I desired, but it was like the scariest thing to even think about trying to trust somebody again and trying
Right.
to
Yeah.
kind of build a new relationship. So that's kind of where I was at. I did find someone, and it was kind of a leap of faith, um, to be able to trust. I kind of put it in God's hands. Like, I don't know how to trust people anymore. I
Yeah.
need you to guide me. I need to know if someone's safe or if they're not safe. And that's really where I put a lot of my faith was in Him, because I could barely trust myself to make a
Right.
judgment call anymore. So I did find a person, but we got married. I moved in. He had a child too, so we're blending our two families, and
Mhm.
thought this is just going to be so good. And then it was really hard again, and it really caught me off guard. I was like, but we have all the right intentions. We have
Yeah.
similar values. What is happening? And so I believe that that first year in another marriage, in a new marriage, that Satan or the enemy, whatever you want to call him, is just like
Right.
fighting to break up this new family unit.
Right.
I think that's one of his greatest goals, is to like destroy families. So that's actually really typical, is that first year or two in a new blended family is very, very hard. We were able to kind of work through that. And that's what I do now. I'm a coach for moms and blended families, because it was so hard for me. I was like, this shouldn't have been as
Yeah.
difficult as it was. I felt so alone. Even in like my religious community, I felt really out of place.
Yeah.
Like I was the only one in this situation. And I know that now that's not the reality of it, but that's how I felt at the time. So yeah, that's kind of the work I'm in. I I still believe in families, and I think that they can be our greatest gifts. I'm really glad that we were able to kind of work through that with God, and make that happen for
Yeah,
our
that's
family.
good. Well, I'm just listening to your story. I'm grateful for your parents because you need somebody that has the clarity, that is outside of the situation, that can recognize what's healthy, what's not healthy, what's very
Yes.
toxic, what's not good for you. And not everybody has the relationship with their parents, perhaps, that they would be those people, but that's good for you to
Right.
have them. And then you also said about, helping, you were relying on God to help you with your judgments of people. And I think
Yes.
that's key too, because anytime you ask God for clarity, I feel like he does give it. And so if you can put your recovery and rebuilding and dating, and
Yeah.
testing out new people and all that, if you can put that in God's hands and ask him for clarity around it all, he will start to show you, which doors are open and which doors are closed.
Yes. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I think that's like a critical step, is to recognize that you need to put it in God's hands, that, you can't navigate all of this on your own. It's just not good then if you're just trying to navigate it all by yourself.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
would have been a mess if I had been trying to figure that out. I mean, I was kind of a mess anyway. But with God, like, we're able to figure it out together, right? He's able
right.
to help me through that. So,
Yeah. Well, and even with the decision to, should I start dating? Should I not start dating? And,
mhm.
navigating life now as a divorced person, and especially a divorced Christian, because I talk a lot about how that does feel, isolating and
Yeah,
judgmental and things like that. And so that's difficult too, if you don't have yourself rooted in Christ and in your faith and all that. And if you do, it's still difficult, but at least you have that foundation, at least you have
right.
grounding. So what was helpful to you during the time that you were single?
Some of the most helpful, easy to some people, but it it was literally what got me through, was turning to God in prayer. I have never felt so strongly that God was hearing and answering my prayers as that time frame of my life when I was a single mom.
Yeah.
That, like, I just handed it all over to him, and um every day just like saw answers to those prayers. I saw, even though my world felt so out of control, turning to him, studying, like in my Bible, and praying, just brought me back to, and helped me gain the clarity I needed every single day. Gave me that strength, his strength, to make it through another day. And sometimes it literally was a day at a time. How can I make it through the next couple hours? I went back
Right.
to work full time, which I had been a stay-at-home mom before that. So
Yeah.
that was a transition, like dropping my daughter off at daycare, and so many
Right.
changes.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And again, it's about like seeking him for the clarity, seeking him for the strength and all of that, because you do go through so many transitions and things aren't the same as they used to be. And in any
Yeah.
situation in life, of course, things are always changing,
Mhm.
so we have to adapt and all of that. So that's good. I think I did the same thing. I tried to root myself in my faith, continue in my Bible
Yes.
study and all of that, instead of turning from it,
Right.
or being preoccupied so much with all of my responsibilities and everything, which is a real thing as a single mom. But I still had to put in the time and the effort for my faith. And kind of similar to you, that's when it grew the most, I feel like,
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
that season of being newly divorced and a single mom then. So, and then looking back, what would you have focused more on when you were single that would have probably helped you in the long run?
With hindsight, I think I would have tried to slow down my brain a little bit.
Okay.
um, Everything was just like chaos all the time, in my heart, in my head. Like, so if I could have just slowed down a little, done a little more self-care, and I realized I was in a survival mode, right?
Right.
But if I could have tried to like really take care of my basic needs so I could relax a little, and try to enjoy that moment in time.
Right.
I do think I was able to enjoy parts of it, but I think I missed out on some of it still. Just being so
Yeah.
stressed, I missed out on enjoying the moments.
Do you feel that there's something for self-care that you were able to do easily as a single mom? Maybe you weren't thinking, hey, I need to do this, but was there something that you could stop right then and be like, oh, okay, I can do this for myself and it'll just take a short period of time? It was kind of easy to maybe fit in.
Um, trying to think. Trying to think. It's been a while. So I did start taking voice lessons again. Like I had done it
Okay.
before, and I was like, you know what? This is something I want to do. I'm just going to do it for me. And that actually was super fun. And it was nice. I didn't have to like ask permission to spend money on anything.
Yeah.
That was one of those things that would have been like a no, we don't have money for that. Heck
Yeah.
no type thing. So yeah, that was fun to be able to do that and just kind of to make my own decisions where I had been in a habit for 8 years of my first marriage of
Right.
always asking permission to do all the things. So
Yeah. And that's really freeing to be able to just be like, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do, you know?
yeah,
So
it
that's
actually
great.
was
That is
kind of
something.
hard. It was hard in some ways too, because I
Yeah.
wasn't used to just making decisions for me.
Right. And
But
now that's an added responsibility that you're having to take on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But it
that's
was
good. The voice
a
lessons are a
huge,
good idea.
yeah, I think that's really important for anyone. Like find something that you used to love
Right.
and go find it again. Go do it
Yeah.
again.
Figure out how you can do it even as a single mom or even with
Mhm.
limited time or whatever. And now with online, you can even do that things like that online where you don't have
Yeah.
to travel and yeah. So that's great. That's a good example. Um, how did you then navigate dating as a single mom? And what advice would you give to somebody that's either already dating or just thinking about it?
Oh, dating was I look back and I just laugh about the whole experience because it's um you have to do it if you want to have another relationship,
Right.
but
Yep.
it's like kind of a disaster sometimes, right? I don't know. I was meeting people online. I didn't know how to meet people. I met some people in person, but most of the people I met were online.
Yeah.
And you never know what you're going to get when you're
Right.
dating online. So that was interesting. I was also at an age, I'd gone out with a lot of guys that had never been married and kind of had this mindset like, oh, I don't want to date someone that's divorced because they're probably the one that caused the divorce. And I realized now that was
Hmm.
not the greatest mindset to go in.
Right.
Looking back, I actually think a lot of those guys who had never been married, it would have been really hard for them to transition to just being a dad all of a sudden.
Yeah.
They were kind of used to their lifestyle. And I'm not going to say that that's like the right answer for everyone, but for my situation, it was good that I finally started looking at at other options, someone that was married, because that's what I ended up marrying was someone
Right.
that did have a child. But it's hard. I remember like literally being scared to death, like frozen in anxiety, going on a date, like trying to figure out how to have a conversation with someone again, trying to figure out how to flirt with someone again. Like
Yeah.
this is so awkward. I haven't done this in such a long time. I don't know how to do this. Plus, like dating changed in that time frame. Like all of a sudden people are like texting each other all the time where before I was married that wasn't really a thing. That which
Right.
probably dates me some, but it was so different. So I had to look at it as like kind of an experiment every day. Like this isn't gonna make or break anything, right?
Right.
And again, putting my trust in God, like, hey, if I'm supposed to be with this person, like help me not screw it up.
Right.
Or help them see past like the stupid things I'm saying or whatever else, like knowing just full trust in him that he will guide me in this process. I know without a doubt that there were people that I dated that helped me grow in certain ways, learn certain lessons in that dating process. So even though it didn't work out with them, there was still a huge benefit to even going out with them.
Yeah, I would agree. I had similar situations, and one of them in particular is the lesson of learning that not everybody is like your ex. Especially if you're
Yeah.
divorced, you wind up trying to date and putting yourself out there and everything, and you do meet some good people that teach you that not every single person did the same thing your ex did, or not every single person operates that way, or not, and to me, the first time I think I learned that, the first, no, I wouldn't say it was a relationship. Like I had a few dates, or, with this particular person, but I remember just being kind of like confused or like awestruck or like, how is this possible that this is going well? Like we weren't necessarily really a romantic match, but meaning how's it going well, as in like the conversation is like easy, like he's fun to hang out with, he's willing to like talk about things we disagree on, like some of it was just unlearning the lessons you had previously learned, and realizing that not everybody is the same way. And that's like a really good lesson that you can learn just by putting yourself out there, even if those relationships, don't work out, or whatever it may be. And I wouldn't say like that relationship didn't work out. It was just, we weren't really compatible, but it was still fun to get out there, fun to meet that particular person. And you do learn more about yourself and more about relationships as you go through it. So
I agree 100%. And I love that you said not everyone is like my ex. Like that was one of the hardest things. I was constantly being triggered. And so like teaching my body, I'm safe right now. I'm not reliving my past experience, even though my body's like having anxiety about this situation. There was one guy, he had the exact same model of motorcycle that my ex-husband had. And I was like, just completely triggered by that. Like I just couldn't breathe. I was like, oh my gosh. And I just exposing myself and being, this is okay. It's not the same person. I love that you mentioned that was part of my growing and learning process. And it was a process that was necessary.
Yeah, for sure. It's necessary to find your ultimate relationship that you're going to be in, then your blended family, remarriage, and all of that. And it's learning too that some of your triggers, are alerting you to actual red flags, in different potential relationships, or, some of them are saying, hey, we've been through this before. We don't want to go down that road again. But some of them are what you're describing, where it's like a neutral circumstance, like him having that motorcycle is not really telling you you're going down the same path you were at before. And so it also helps to, like you wound up doing, you recognize that, like, okay, it's just the motorcycle. Like, I need to check in with how I'm feeling and what's going on, and see, is this really something that is a learned experience that's helpful from my past, that now I can recognize a red flag easily? Or is it just something I'm carrying from my previous experience that doesn't really belong in this present circumstance? So, it's unlearning and learning a lot of that too along the way. If it's going to help you, recognize a red flag, good. But if it is you just being triggered by past experiences, then it is helpful to work through that, like you're saying. So that's great.
Right. And it can be really hard to do that on your own. So a huge
Right.
benefit in like finding a third party, a counselor, a therapist, a coach, somebody that can kind of give you some outside perspective, be like, no,
Right.
actually, the motorcycle probably doesn't really matter. Or like, you know what? I think maybe what's happening here is they might be love bombing you, and right, you might want to watch out for that. Like they're
Right.
throwing a lot of attention really, really fast. That could be a red flag.
Yeah, because when you're in those situations, sometimes you don't see that, or maybe it's a situation that you're just unaware of completely and you don't
Hmm.
realize something that's happening that an outsider can more easily see, or somebody,
Yes.
like a therapist or a coach can more easily see, oh, I can easily recognize that this is what's going on, and can kind of help you through that. So,
Yeah, exactly. I think there's huge benefit. That's actually one of the first things I say to most of my friends after they get divorced. Like, find a person that you can bounce ideas off, go to a therapist or a
right.
coach or somebody that you can guide you through this process.
Right, because they have their eyes wide open and they have either training or experience themselves
Hmm.
to be able to navigate that better or recognize it. So that's great
Hmm.
advice. And then how about dating as a single mom, how were you able to navigate that with, you said you had your daughter at the time?
Yeah, I was really lucky in that aspect because my parents were there and they could do a lot of babysitting for me. They were happy to help in that
Mhm.
way. I know not everybody has that, and so that can be complicated. But I think, getting creative, thinking outside the box, maybe find a friend. Maybe it's another single mom. You could like swap, date swap. You don't have to like pay each other. You just take
Yeah.
turns. I've done that with other couples before since I've been married, but we can think creatively of how to do that. Maybe if your child is going to their other parents' home, if you have like shared custody, then maybe you plan all your dates on those nights where that's
Right.
what my husband did actually. He's like, weekdays are my days,
Yeah.
weekends, we're not gonna go out. So you can think outside the box a little bit, but I was lucky to have someone there, family that could help me out.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing that you can do too, if you don't have family in the area or friends that can babysit or whatever, is even consider doing a video date. Like
That's
all
a
the
good
dating
idea.
apps nowadays have options for video where you don't have to actually exchange your phone number or like your information or whatever. And that can save you a lot of time too,
Right.
carving out time to actually go on a date with somebody or carving out a day and driving there and all of this. You might find out just from a simple video chat that this probably isn't going to go further than that, and
Right,
there you
right.
saved yourself having to get the babysitter and having to invest all the time and things
Yeah.
like that. So
That's
that's
actually
always,
a great idea. I love that idea. And like you're saying, usually that first date can be very telling.
yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, I think I would like to explore this, get to know him a little more, or it's like a hard no.
Right.
Like,
And so if you can just remember, well, I have the video option. I remember I went on a date with somebody that he was very nice, but I just felt, again, we don't really have a romantic connection. I don't think, nice
yeah.
guy. But afterwards I realized, why didn't I even think to do the video chat? Because I had chatted with somebody over video before.
Hmm.
And so just even remembering that can help you if you're a single parent trying to date. It can really help you with your time if you just do the video chat, because on the video chat you might very quickly be able to tell yes or no, or at least be like, okay,
Hmm.
this is somebody that I would like to go on an actual date, and then you can carve out that time as more of a priority, for that
Right.
person. So
Yeah, I love that advice. That's great advice.
yeah. So what could someone do now, even if they're not dating or not in a relationship, that would one day help them to be in a blended family?
I would say the most important things you can do, and actually this is what I do with my clients when they come to me, is you figure it out yourself. Like work on you,
Yeah.
strengthen yourself, work through your triggers. There will be triggers that will come up when you get remarried that you cannot work on while you're single. And that's frustrating, right? Because I was going to therapist, I was doing all the work while I was single, but then I got put back into marriage in a situation, and all of a sudden, all these things started coming up for me. It's helpful to know that that is going to happen, because there was
Yeah.
nothing wrong. It was just, I'm in this circumstance now, and
Right.
things will be coming up for me. So knowing that I'm not going to panic, but the more I can do on me, strengthening myself, trusting myself, finding ways to have that self-care, right? Build the relationships with my kids while I can, while it's like that
Yeah.
one-on-one time.
Right.
As soon as you get remarried, you're going to feel like your time is pulled apart a little bit more, and that can be hard. But if you've got a strong relationship with your kids, keep that communication.
Yeah, that's great
That's
advice
huge.
too, because you need to make sure that your kids know that they are loved by you and important to you, and and they've experienced probably the divorce as well if you were divorced.
Mhm.
And so they need to have, the knowledge that you are there for them, you do love them, so that
Yeah.
one day if you do start dating, or one day you get in a relationship or are going to be in a blended family, they have that foundation too of knowing securely that they're loved by mom and they're not getting brushed aside or slighted
Yeah.
or whatever. And they
Yeah.
those feelings still might come when you get remarried or in a relationship, of course, because like you said, now your time's split a little bit. But if you can show your kids that foundation while you're single,
Mhm.
it's going to help you in the long run, with some of those feelings, because I feel like they're going to have a better foundation to know that mom does love me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and hopefully they will blend a little bit easier
Yeah.
with that foundation.
Absolutely.
So, and
And a
then,
lot of times
oh, go
those
ahead.
fears do come up for them, like, oh
Right.
no, what's this going to look like? So just keeping that conversation going with them, keep that open communication, allow them to feel whatever feelings throughout the whole
Right.
process.
Yeah. And I would say even blatantly ask them what you just said, like check in with them and say, I know I'm in this relationship now. I know it is
Mhm.
taking some of my time. How are you feeling about that? Like, do you feel like we're still spending enough time together? Or, and then when you get remarried, it can be the same conversation again. Like,
Right.
now things are a little bit different again because we're remarried, and whatever the dynamic may be, maybe they're having to share their physical space because they're sharing a room or something, or maybe
Mhm.
it's just, different dynamics in the family are not what they're used to from before. So even just blatantly asking them, hey, how are you
Yeah.
doing with this change? Or how is this going for you? Do you feel like you're getting enough time? Or do you feel loved in this situation? Something like that. Just asking
Right.
them would be good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge.
Yeah. And then when somebody is actually in a relationship and maybe they think it's moving towards remarriage, what can they do then to prepare for being in a blended family?
I would, there's so many things, but something that caught me off guard was co-parenting with somebody else, a new person all of a sudden.
Okay.
Because I had full custody of my daughter, so I wasn't used to that dynamic. I couldn't comprehend what it would be like to have a child like coming and going, and all of a sudden, not an ex-partner, my husband's ex-partner, may or may not like me, and that will really, really change the dynamic. Depending on how that goes.
Right.
Sometimes they don't like you at the beginning, and then you're able to build that relationship. But talking through that, what is that going to look like with the person that you're dating? Hey, what is your relationship like? I know a lot of people like to meet that person before they're like, yeah, sign me up, I'm gonna I'm gonna be part of this, right?
Yeah.
So that might be something you might want to consider. Another big piece is parenting styles. That can be a huge frustration in a blended family. So if you're in a serious relationship, let's talk about what the rules are going to be in our house if we're going in that direction. What is screen time going to look like? What is,
Mhm.
what's going to happen if your child's doing something that I don't like?
Right.
How are we going to handle those situations? Just having the conversations can save us a lot of stress, because we get these expectations in our mind. We sometimes think that everybody thinks the same way as us, and that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
So what if we're going to make this relationship work? What do you expect my role as step parent, or what do I expect your role as step parent to look like? And let's just be on the same page before we even get into it.
Yeah. And those are things that you definitely have to have conversations like that before you get remarried. And so I feel like if the relationship is not having those conversations, that to me would be an indication to pull back. Then maybe you're not ready to be remarried, or maybe that particular relationship isn't for you for remarriage. Because we should definitely be able to at least discuss, different things related to the kids, or different things even related to, well, now we're going to share a home together. So let's say that there aren't even kids in the picture,
Right.
Just like a first marriage too, you're now sharing a home with somebody, and maybe something they do with their morning routine really annoys you, or something. Like you have to be able to talk about things like this. Or the other thing I can think of for me, I now inherited a dog when I got remarried, and so that was really a difficult adjustment for me, was the dog, because now I had to make sure I was available to let the dog out when I didn't have to think about that before, now I had to, kind of rearrange my schedule a little bit to accommodate that. And so that was hard for me. And so even things like that, it's good to have open communication about ahead of time for the things that are going to be new for you, whenever you do get into the blended family. There's a lot of resources too for blended families that I didn't know of before. One of them is Family Life Blended is an organization that does a once a year virtual summit. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but my husband and I did that last year. And it really opened us up to, wow, there are ministries specifically for blended families. There are ministries that are trying to help. And so if you can tap into some of that before you're married, it will help you to prepare, and it will help you to maybe talk about or come up with a plan of some of the common things that people might go through beforehand, before you're actually experiencing it yourself and then wondering, what do I do? And now I know that there's people like you, like step family coaches, that can actually help a couple or an individual through some of these things, and use their own experience, to help you through it. So that's great.
Yeah. I wish I had known some of the resources. I just felt so isolated and alone, which just made it worse.
Right. So. Yeah, I would agree. And it's, if you don't seek some of these things out, then you won't know they exist. And like I was saying before, especially as a divorced Christian, there is also that kind of stigma and isolation that comes just from that group. And so realizing that there are other Christians that are actually doing things to help you, or actually there to provide you with, the help or support and things like that is really valuable. So I wish I knew more of that when I was going through it myself as well. But at least now on this other end, now I'm seeing like, oh, this is available and this is available. And then I'm able to kind of pass it on to people in my group and other people that may not know that, or maybe aren't at that stage yet.
Right. Yeah. And I just think it's so important. It is going to be difficult. So knowing that as you go into a new relationship, excuse me, that the divorce rate for a second marriage is for a blended family is close to 70%. So how committed are you? Do you want to put your kids through more trauma? Like you have to be fully committed. You've got to be able to have the hard conversations with your partner. You've got to, I would say, like, even practice working through like conflict resolution type things with your partner, because that will be a skill it will be imperative in that relationship. Right.
Yeah. And that's something I talk about in my coaching, is how to communicate, how to talk through a conflict. Like, how can you just have healthy communication? Like, how can you communicate about things that are important to you? Maybe they're not important to the other person, but both people need to understand each other. Maybe something's really important to me and it's not important at all to my husband. Well, it's still important that he understands why it's important to me, because if you don't have that understanding, you're going to have more conflict because you're coming from two different places. Something's very important to one person and something's not at all important to the other person. There's going to be probably conflict if you don't know that, because the one person's just like, I don't see why this is such a big deal, and so if you take the time to understand why is it a big deal, and then you're able to be more compassionate, you're willing to work through things a little bit more because you're now coming from a place of understanding. And so I would say too, to prevent re-divorce, like you need to make sure that you're choosing a healthy relationship. Like when you're going through rebuilding yourself after your divorce, exactly what you said, like learn what are my triggers, what are things that I'm carrying with me that are from a past experience, and are they something that can continue to help me, or are they something that I need now to let go of, because I'm no longer in that situation, and use those things to navigate being single. And then when you're dating, learn how to choose a healthy relationship, because we want to make sure that we're not repeating the same things that we've done that weren't so great for us, the first time around or in the past. So I would say for me, that helps me prepare, is to make sure that I've got myself rooted and grounded in Christ, and I learned everything that I could possibly learn about relationships during that time. I'm sure I could have learned more, but I felt I did a good deal of learning about different relationships, so that I could ensure that, okay, this relationship is right, and not settle for a relationship that wasn't truly what I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you were saying that, it had me thinking, like, I've heard people say before, like, don't get into another relationship until you're completely healed. And I actually don't agree with that, because I don't believe in being completely healed. Like, healing is a process. It's not a one-time event. If I had waited to be completely healed, I would not be married still. I would not be married. I would be trying to figure out my life still, right? And I had post-traumatic stress disorder after my first marriage, and it literally has taken me years of conscious practice and effort and therapy and to work through that. If I had waited to like work through all that, I would never be in a relationship again, right?
Yeah.
Luckily, my husband has been there to like support me and like strengthen me through that, which actually has strengthened our relationship as a couple, to like watch him have compassion for me and like try to have understanding and patience with me through that whole process. And that's been beautiful. I think that's kind of how God works, that he meets us where we are, doesn't expect perfection. So if you're kind of on that fence of like, well, I'm not fully healed yet, I think you do the best you can. You put in the work you can, but don't sit around and wait to be perfect, because it's not going to happen.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. And two things I want to say from that is, then your husband's helping you from a place of understanding. Like I was just talking about before, he then understands certain things are difficult for you because of your past circumstances. And because he has that understanding, then he's able to be compassionate towards you and provide you with strength, like you were saying, And then the other thing I would say also for the healing, I actually have a free guide about 3 steps for finding your dream relationship. And the first one is to find healing from your past relationships. And I would agree, it's not the goal of, I have to be completely healed, I have to be completely perfect, or I have to be, completely resolved from everything that happened to me before. But you do need to have some sort of healing going on. And like we were saying before, whether that's through a therapist, maybe it's through a coach, maybe it's through an understanding friend or something, you know, it's going to be very difficult for you to move on, even single, but definitely in another relationship, if you haven't done anything to heal from your past. So it's definitely going to be an ongoing process, but you definitely need to start it, and that you're recognizing what are things that I need to keep with me and what are things I need to let go of, and find some healing from the things that you maybe you endured for years and years and years, or maybe something completely changed your thinking or your view of yourself, and you need to maybe rewire that, before you can move forward, or before you can rebuild yourself, or before you can be in a relationship. So I would agree, you do need to find some sort of healing, but it is going to be an ongoing thing. And we're never going to be perfect, of course, this side of heaven, right? We're never going to be perfect here on earth. And so it's like, we do need to find some healing though, so that we can at least process some of the hurts and some of the traumas that we've gone through. But I agree also, if I would have waited until, I had everything with relationships figured out, well, I never would have gone on any date, because the whole online dating and everything, I didn't know how to do that. Like you were sharing, I didn't know how to navigate it or go through it. And so it's like, I had the same thing as you. How do I trust somebody? And if I would have waited until I absolutely felt sure I know exactly how to trust somebody, and I wouldn't have done it. And like I was saying, some of those early dates taught me and helped me to heal, because I was able to see, oh, okay, this is a different circumstances than what I'm used to, and that helped part of the healing process for me.
Oh, absolutely. Me too. I think it actually, I did a lot of dating, and I think it actually sped up that healing process. I was able to see with different eyes and kind of experience the emotions, and really leaning into those emotions that I was feeling. Helped move through that process.
And do you feel like, how long do you feel like it took you to start dating or to feel ready to date? This is something I feel like would be different for different people. You do need to take some time, like I said, to heal and enjoy being single. And we don't want to jump into relationships like right away before we've done some healing. So for you personally, how long do you feel you took before you were like, okay, I'm going to try to date?
For me, it was pretty quick, because in my marriage, I fought for a couple of years. And so I was at a place of like, I was done long before I was actually done.
Right.
And so I think it was just a few months, honestly, just before I started just trying to meet people. And a lot of it really wasn't like with the intention of, I want to go get married. It was like, I need to know how to talk to people.
Right.
How do I communicate with someone of the opposite gender? I don't know. Right. So it really was for me, like just getting out there and practicing, because I knew it wasn't probably going to work out with the first lots of people that I went out with.
Right.
So, I guess going into that mindset, like, hey, I'm just going to go have some fun. I'm going to meet some people, maybe make some friends. It took pressure off of me, but also off of the people I was going out with. And I was able to just learn and grow in that experience. So I didn't take myself too seriously in that process.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when you were saying that, is take the pressure off of yourself. Like you don't have to go into it thinking this is the person I'm going to marry, or just see how it goes, And I also would agree that, I didn't date until after I was fully divorced, and like, kind of like you were saying, there was time in there where technically I was still married, but by that time I had already started a lot of the healing process, and I had already started kind of moving forward and everything. I still didn't date until after I was married. So, time frames there have to do with people's specific circumstances and, what, how did they have to navigate everything? for their specific set of circumstances. So I just don't want people to feel like, oh, I got to jump into another relationship right away. And that's a common thing.
Right.
I feel like in our culture is people feel like they have to be coupled up, or that, and so they do sometimes jump in way too soon. But if you can use that time even before you're actually legally divorced, and then after, to kind of rebuild yourself a little bit and find some sort of healing, it really will benefit you in the long run, which is what it did for me as well, and helped me then to find the relationship that I really ultimately think that God intended for me to have from the get-go. So
Right. Yeah. I think that timing is really important. And like I said, like you're saying, finding ourselves again, a lot of times, and if we're in an unhealthy relationship, we lose ourselves.
right.
We forget who we are. I didn't even know what I liked. Like, I was like, what do I
Right.
like to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
So just rediscovering that, and then put yourself back out there.
I agree. Definitely. You need to figure out what you like and what you don't like. What do you want out of life? What do you not want out of life? Both of those things. And when you've been in a relationship for a long time, you do kind of lose sight of some of that, especially if it's going in the opposite direction as what you originally thought. You can lose part of yourself in that, and it's important to make sure that you're moving forward knowing fully who you are and what you like and what you don't like, so that you're not attaching yourself to somebody else
Right.
for what they like and for what they want. You want to make sure that you know yourself who you are and what you're looking for. So
Yeah.
well, it's been so great talking with you. I just want to give everybody listening, if they want to connect with you, where can they find you online?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's blendingbravely.com. You can also find me on Instagram or on TikTok. My handle is It's Me, Brittney P. Brittney is spelled Brittney. And I love making connections with people. So feel free to reach out. I've been there. I felt all the things. So I get it.
Yeah. And it's so good to reach out to somebody that has gone through it, the same thing that you're facing, has gone through it and is on the other side, and is further down the road as you, because they can really help you out. So I'm excited for that. So I will put all that information in the description for this. And I just thank you so much for being here today. And hopefully it was helpful to people, and hopefully they pull out a lot of good little nuggets of wisdom, because I think there is a lot in this show.